Welcome back to the loading zone. Today's deep thought: trucks have big wheels. Welcome to 2026, where the rule book grew fangs and the crooks, they got fiber internet. See, CSA got its biggest facelifts since 2010. Speak English went from a suggestion to park it over there. And non-domiciled CDL crackdowns made about 13,000 licenses disappear faster than free pizza at a trucking terminal. See, we're going to look at what's meanwhile happening in the world, what's happening ahead in freight fraud, and how this has evolved from a guy with a fake email address to something that looks like Silicon Valley run by criminals. Today, we're going to talk about fake carriers, stolen identities, double brokered freight, one bad click, and congratulations, you're today's cautionary LinkedIn post. The good news? Today's guests have lived on both sides of the clipboard. They've written the tickets, fought the tickets, and now they're here to help you avoid becoming someone else's compliance horror story. First up, we got Rob Carpenter, driver, broker, carrier, owner, brokerage owner, safety executive, and now the VP of compliance at TruckSafe. He's seen every trick in the book and probably helped write a few chapters on how to catch them. Then we got John Seidel, and 20 years as Wisconsin State Motor Carrier Trooper and FMCSA investigator. If you ever got that sinking feeling pulling into that scale house, he might have been the reason. So if you'd rather spend your money on diesel than lawyers, if you'd rather haul freight than explain yourself to an auditor, if you're tired of criminals making trucking look like the world's dumbest reality show, you're in the right place. This is Break Check, and it's time to go full stop. But if you're serious about protecting your money, running smarter in today's industry, then like, subscribe, and follow FreightWaves for your top freightcast trucking news and real trucking talk. Speaking of trucking news, let's look at what's happening out there today. US DOT just established its newest target. Meet Problem Pete.
Decades, getting a CDL, the commercial license you actually need to pilot an 80,000-pound big rig down the highway, was a total flip of a coin. One path was totally legit. The other path? Kapow! Pure Wild West chaos. Meet Honest Hank. Hank wanted to earn his CDL the right way. First, Hank studied hard and earned his commercial learner's permit. Then Hank attended a federally certified CDL training school. Then came the final road test, vehicle inspection, backing test, real highway driving. And after all that hard work, Hank officially earned his CDL. Then, there's Problem Pete. Back under Biden and Buttigieg, Problem Pete found an easier way. Instead of real training, shady operators exploited the outdated system with little oversight. Then came the DMV process. Some states offered CDL testing in over 25 languages. They skipped foreign background checks and handed out long-term licenses to people whose work authorization had already expired. That's no bueno. Honest Hank earned his CDL under his real legal name. Problem Pete? Not so much. And once they hit the road, oh my, the difference became terrifyingly obvious. Honest Hank maintained a safe, clean truck and followed the law. Problem Pete's truck looked like it was held together with duct tape and bad decisions. Hank followed road signs carefully. Pete couldn't read them at all. When Pete did get busted for safety violations, he had a shady trick up his sleeve, transforming into a chameleon carrier. He'd get shut down by inspectors and magically reopen under a brand new name almost overnight. Honest Hank obeyed mandatory rest periods. Problem Pete rewound his driving logs like an old VHS tape. Thankfully, it's the end of the road for Problem Pete. Yes, sir. Because when President Trump got elected again, he promised to make America safe again. So he and Secretary Sean Duffy, they devised a plan to restore integrity to our trucking system and protect you and your family on our American roads.
All right, well, that'd probably be the first and last cartoon we play on Break Check, but it was great to establish what we're going to be talking about today. Now, the reason that was important is we're going to be talking about compliance. We're going to be talking about what carriers can do But let's talk about what carriers feel like right now. Check this out. Yeah, that about sums it up. They keep getting knocked down and finding a way to get back up. Well, most of them at least. Some of them don't get back up. Now, you never know what you're going to see on the road these days. And it's kind of crazy out there. Check this out.
I'm on Highway 56.
Yep. This is not AI. That is a bear on a pole. And here we thought it was odd when Chicago was putting goats on a pole, hoping that the Cubs would win someday.
Okay.
And because I already called the Game and Fish, and they said there's nothing that they could do. They could go and shoot it, tranquilize it to get it down, but it's gonna end up, if they do that, then it's gonna fall and could hurt itself. So they told me that.
Well, that was odd. Here's what's not odd. Here's a shout out from our sponsors over at 10th Street.
Do you want to grow your fleet but get buried by paperwork, slow hiring processes, and outdated systems, all while struggling to comply with changing safety regulations? Enter 10th Street, the all-in-one platform that simplifies driver lifecycle management by bringing marketing, recruiting, onboarding, safety, and retention together in one place. Sign up for a demo today.
Appreciate the love and support from our friends over at 10th Street. But now let's get to brass tacks. Let's bring in Rob Carpenter of TruckSafe. Rob Carpenter has driven the truck, owned the truck, brokered the freight, and somehow managed to sleep at night. He's the VP of Compliance at TruckSafe and FreightWaves contributor. He has seen every scam, every shortcut, and every crook's one weird trick before they even posted it on the internet. Today, we're talking about freight fraud, stolen identities, and how to keep some guy with a laptop and a fake MC number from stealing your next paycheck. Rob, welcome back to Break Check. How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
Better than you. Like, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I saw some of the videos that you'd be putting out there on, and you see them on a regular basis. Like,
yeah, it's become the norm,
like you're fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, it's a full-time thing.
So Rob, let's just talk surviving the crackdown. There's a lot of talk about the crackdowns. There's a lot of talk about whether they're going to go away, whether they're going to hammer down. But 2026 has been the year of FAFO in trucking. CSA got its biggest overhaul since 2010. Everybody's got an opinion. Almost nobody actually read the rule book. What's the biggest change carriers need to stop ignoring today?
Well, the CSA piece, that still has to finish its way out. But I think what they need to stop ignoring today, the biggest part of this, and I think the biggest problem that we've kind of maybe not looked at enough, is the cloning and the identity theft issue. And I mean, it's probably driving a lot of the $725 million in theft losses that we see, because a lot of times we have these expert witness cases, and I think I've got probably 6 at this point, just covering this one instance where people show up to pick up freight. They say they're the carrier that's supposed to be there, and they're not that carrier, right? And that's the issue. So they're picking it up. They're not cutting any locks. They're just picking it up like they're the carrier, and then they're leaving like they're the carrier, and that's it. So, and when we're seeing this with big carriers, I mean, we're seeing even FedEx and some large carriers that have their trucks cloned.
I mean, we see a lot of stuff happening at FedEx, but we'll leave that for another show.
Yeah. But, cloning the trucks, I mean, it's not just happening with moms and pops. It's happening with some of the biggest carriers in the space, where people are showing up as if they're Werner or FedEx or UPS, and it looks just like one of their trucks, and kind of find out it's not.
Well, I mean, is that what's happening with the government side of the freight then? I mean, are these fake carriers just showing up and they're not catching it? Or is the government just not vetting the freight that they're giving out to these people that shouldn't be hauling governmental freight?
I mean, in some cases, it's both. Last week, there was an issue that we had, and we were on a Department of War call about it, and basically some munitions got picked up, and then no one actually knew who picked the munitions up. So it was a discussion that was pretty crazy. But that's not the first time this happens. It happens all the time. And I mean, sometimes it's the carrier that was chosen to haul the freight. Sometimes it's not the carrier that was chosen to haul the freight.
You just kept every American watching right now up tonight thinking like, oh, this is a one-off. No, it actually happens a couple times.
No, it happens all the time.
By everybody.
Pretty wild.
He's like, it happens all the time. This is normal. It's not normal, Rob. The fact that we're even looking at it like it is a problem.
But I mean, it's kind of, I think we get conditioned to so many things, and you get to have this conditioned emotional response or mental response to things where we see it so much, so often, it happens every day, and then you kind of get programmed to think it's okay. I mean, we did the same thing with food, right? Like we went from like 99-cent meals at fast food restaurants to $15 meals, but it was over time, right? It was conditioned. So same concept with trucking. I mean, you get conditioned to seeing it every single day, and it never changes. So, I like to think that we're on a better path now than we've probably ever been, but we'll see what happens.
So speak English or park the truck. That's not just a Facebook meme anymore. What has to be the driver's qualification file today that companies can make sure that those drivers remain in service rather than getting another out of service statistic added to them?
This got to be pretty wild, and 10th Street's your sponsor, and I used 10th Street a lot. I was a client of theirs at an enterprise carrier, and one of the things that I liked about 10th Street is it gives you the workflow and the work list and the checklist to say, hey, here's what you have to have for this job code, whether it's a CDL driver or whether it's somebody that's not a CDL driver but still needs a DQ file. But one of the pieces that a lot of people are missing is that English language proficiency build into that workflow. Like very few people actually build in any form of English proficiency validation into their driver qualification.
So we just need to drop like a cat in a hat quote that they need to read out loud and be verified. And we can, like green eggs and ham. Pick your poison and just read it, verify that you read it, and make sure that you click the corresponding box and you pass.
I don't know that I can read it, but the funny thing about this is, we've come out with a lot of these AI models now where people are building these AI platforms where it'll actually listen to you, read this, and determine whether you can speak good enough English to drive a truck. These systems exist, and carriers are buying them. Large carriers are buying them. But I actually took one and failed it, and it actually
failed English.
I did. I failed the freaking AI driver English proficiency evaluation because I guess it's the dialect, and it's because AI couldn't pick up the Southern, and it happens at home a lot. Like if I try to talk to Alexa, it's like, what did you just say? So,
well, then the Bostonians are screwed.
Yeah, I know. So, I mean, sometimes it's so subjective, right? I mean, that's one of the good things that I like about AI is it is an objective piece where it's like, hey, can you actually understand the road signs and speak English well enough to drive a truck?
Now, the non-domiciled conversation, that crackdown wiped out tens of thousands of licenses. If you're a carrier, how do you make sure the driver hauling your freight today has a valid CDL tomorrow?
Well, there's all kinds of systems out there. You've got Samba Safety, which is a big one. Embark's a big one. I mean, it monitors the license and it pulls not only the MVRs that you have to have at employment and every year, but it'll continuously monitor that piece. But one of the big parts of it is suspensions for other reasons, like child support. I mean, child support is an immediate. It is. It's a huge one. I mean, so many drivers get pulled off the road, and the problem with it is there's really not a huge due process piece to that. So a lot of times the driver doesn't know and the carrier doesn't know until they get pulled over on the side of the road. So
the drivers should know. They're the one that failed to pay their child support. Like pay for your kids. Like that's hard concept. But at the same regard, I think one of the problems is a lot of carriers, they do periodic checks, but they don't feel like it's their responsibility to have to check it that regularly, or they don't have a system in place to check it that regularly. And then they get caught with their driver out there operating on a suspended license. And well, the driver's like, well, I don't have no money. I mean, it's kind of a catch-22. One, you got to pay your drivers enough. And two, drivers, like, pay for your kids, man.
Yeah. Well, how I tell people to look at responsibility on whose responsibility is who's going to be accountable for it, right? There's two different things here. So if you're the one that's going to ultimately be accountable for it, then you're the one that should ultimately be responsible to make sure it's happening. And that's one of the big workflow things that we push on the carrier side, especially for DQ files. But it's if the driver that you put behind the wheel it's important to qualify them and vet them appropriately. And it's not just about the drivers that are coded as drivers, right? We have a lot of companies who have mechanics who drive their vehicles after fixing them. They're not coded as a driver, but they are driving these commercial vehicles on the road to test drive them and other things. And we have these crashes that happen, and then come to find out it's a mechanic. Well, discovery happens, and there's no drug testing, there's no DQ file, and a lot of people forget those nuance pieces. So whether it's an executive or a mechanic or anybody that's not a coded driver, anybody that's operating a vehicle for you could lead you to exposure, right? So you got to make sure that you're vetting those folks.
So let's say I'm running a fleet of 5 trucks. I've ignored my compliance longer than I've ignored my own cholesterol. Give me 5 things I need to fix in the next 30 days before the FMCSA comes knocking and fixes them for me.
Oh, man. So the first thing is, and I think this is the part that most people miss and why it's not like drilled in, and it's about written driver criteria. And how are you going to hire these people? You know, what criteria are you going to accept, and what are you going to use to weed them out? So that's the big piece. Have a written driver hiring criteria. Start there. So if you don't have that, the whole program kind of falls apart. Then after that, it's really the pieces that you really need to make sure, is this driver qualified? You start with the MVR, you turn on the continuous license monitoring, which are 2 different functions. So a lot of people will buy a Samba, they'll run the MVR, they won't turn on the continuous monitoring. Guy loses his license and he gets popped. Med exams changed big last year. So National Registry changed, no longer collecting med cards, no longer giving them out. It's an automatic process. That's a part that a lot of people haven't adopted yet. And probably one of the biggest ones I think that people are missing is clearinghouse. We're 6 years into clearinghouse, and there are carriers that we go to every day who have never heard of the clearinghouse. So there's a lot of these
at
pieces.
this point.
It is. It's nuts. It's wild. But it happens a lot of times when we roll out these new programs and these new initiatives, whether it's login.gov or clearinghouse. Maybe it doesn't get marketed the best way. Some carriers that live in the sticks and are doing 93 jobs and wearing 45 hats, they just don't follow a lot of what we're doing. Like they may not follow your show. They may not follow FreightWaves because they're so busy all the time, and that marketing never reaches them. So
But being busy isn't an excuse for ignoring compliance. Like, it is your responsibility as a business owner, as a trucking company, to understand the evolution of compliance and regulations. Like that is just it should be known. Ignorance is not an excuse for whether or not you comply.
Yeah, I mean, we've made it easier now than ever. I mean, you can open your phone and watch anything you want, right? I'm not saying watch it going down the road while you're driving or whatever, but you've got technology, you've got news sources, you've got feeds, you've got Federal Register feeds. I mean, it's everywhere. So it's hard to miss it. It's on social. I mean, you just aired Sean Duffy's video from yesterday from social that I think everybody in the world watched.
Pete.
Yeah, Problem Pete. There's a lot of Problem Pete's out there, but it's
Did you notice in that video that how everything was a stick figure except POTUS and Duffy?
The funny thing is, I bought this system like 5 years ago and paid this lifetime fee for this. And it was this program that made this. And I have never used it since. So when he put that out yesterday, I'm like, oh, maybe I need to go revisit that.
Maybe I need to make my own cartoon stick figures. That's awesome. So let's shift gears. Let's talk about fraud. Freight fraud isn't a side hustle anymore. It's practically a Fortune 500 company run by fraudsters. What's the newest scam hitting carriers that got you saying like, hey, I can't believe you guys fell for this one?
Well, I mean, that's a big one, but the cloning and identity theft is still a big one, and it's not necessarily just wrapping the truck and throwing a magnet on it or saying I am with Werner or whoever. There's other aspects of this that have gotten really deep from a technology standpoint, and one of those is basically these cyber criminals will get into your system and then basically figure out everything they need to know to be you, and then they'll become you. And then the next thing you know, you're getting violations at the roadside, or your freight's missing, and then you're just like, what do I do? This is not me. I want to say maybe 3 years ago, we probably had the first wave of carriers that came in and said, we are getting a wild amount of violations at the roadside, and these trucks are not ours. The driver is not ours. We've never heard of these people. So you've got these people who are just getting trucks or have access to trucks that are going around and pulling freight, and they're doing it under no authority and no insurance. So it's a big issue.
So double brokering has become one of trucking's versions of a magic trick. The freight disappears, the money disappears, and somehow you're the volunteer that saw in half of it. Walk us through how this works and some of the red flags that should make every carrier hit the brakes and pay attention.
Well, I mean, a lot of times there's a huge amount of red flags that go into these, and there's a lot of times there's a huge amount of red flags that go into a carrier picking up your freight. That's not really the carrier. It's just something in your psyche decides, hey, it's going to be okay. What's the odds that this is that one? And we've got one right now that's a quadruple broker load that ended up through four European brokers, ended up with a carrier owned by a Russian company who had a Russian licensed CDL, and he ended up killing a father of three. And so the double brokering thing has become huge. But one of the things that I've constantly tried to push for, even since I had in my trucking business, was try to do as much shipper direct freight as you can, because that is where the relationships live, and where the relationship lives is where you know who you're dealing with on an everyday basis. And you learn to trust these people, and it's a relationship. It's not just spot market, broker driven, margin driven freight. So broker, the broker side, the spot market, that's a huge part of where this lives. Stay away from where it lives and find your own freight. Sometimes that's not possible, especially if you're an over the road carrier where you're constantly in different places. But for regional guys, which is becoming more of the norm. I mean, we're hauling less over the road freight than we ever have long haul. So spot freight should be less of an issue now, but it's actually becoming one of the bigger issues just because so many people are relying on it.
So I guess this would be my $1 million question. Law enforcement can't be everywhere. The bad guys know this. So if you're a 5 to 10 truck fleet and or an owner operator, what's your anti-theft playbook? What's some of the habits that keep you from becoming tomorrow's, that sucked kind of story and everyone's reading about your mistake?
Well, I mean, again, I'm going to go back to shipper direct freight, because I ran regional when I had my company. I stayed away from over the road. I worked directly with my shippers. Every day I talked to them. We had a relationship. We were generally in the same area. We went and had lunch together. We knew who we were dealing with, and we knew who their identity was. We knew what their values were. We just knew what we were dealing with, and I think that's the biggest part of kind of handling this situation, is understanding who everyone is, knowing the identity of everyone that you're working with. And when you start to deviate from that, that's where we start to see more and more of the problems. Most of the cases that I deal with, whether it's expert witness side or on the compliance side, it's almost exclusively where people deviated for whatever reason. Maybe a carrier broke down, they grabbed a substitute at the last minute. It all generally goes to the identity and the relationship side. Do you know who you're doing business with, and what are they all about?
So let's talk hiring. We live in a day where people have questions. They think they're doing it right. They might not be doing it right. Let's build that perfect driver DQ file. What absolutely has to be in it today, and what's missing from far too many of them, and that you want to implore them to start including?
Well, those are, really, a lot of people don't realize how frequently they need to do MVRs. And continuous license monitoring now is easier than it's ever been. You got more vendors doing it than we've ever had doing it. This isn't the days of Steve Bryan where he was the only one doing it, right? You've got huge technology pieces that can kind of bleed this in. You've got clearinghouse queries. You've got PSP. PSP is a big one that nobody checks. And people are always asking, what's the difference between PSP and MVR? Why do I need a PSP if I'm running an MVR? Well, when I left trucking full time, my MVR was clean. In Virginia, I had +5, which was the highest you can get. And there was nothing on my record. But if you pulled my PSP, it was 6 pages long. And what that tells you was my MVR was clean. I didn't have a lot of convictions, or I didn't have any convictions. I didn't have any catastrophic crashes on there. But when you looked at the PSP, it showed a different behavioral element. 70-hour violations, 14-hour violations, 10-hour violations, bald tires, no lights. So
you were a problem Pete.
Oh, well, I don't know if I was a problem Pete. We ran a little different then. We just trying to get the job done. And ironically, one of the things I talk frequently about is people like me who ran that way years ago and decades ago were the reason a lot of these systems exist, from ELDs and everything else. The arguments became, well, Rob has 93 70-hour violations in the past 14 months. We should do something about this. Let's create an ELD system. But it's you've got all these places to where you can put these things in, and for driver qualification, PSP can be a huge indicator of what their general behavior was. Are they rule followers? It's very similar to TSA pre-check or global entry. What the government wants to know when they're giving you these expedited access programs to airports and airplanes, etc., is, are you a rule follower, or are you someone that's subject to possibly break the rules if it incentivizes you? So, and a lot of truck drivers, you can figure that out from a PSP. Are they going to run more for the money, or are they going to run more for the understanding of their moral, ethical responsibility of what's happening on the highway?
So when we look at some of the areas that plaintiff attorneys start with, they don't necessarily start with the truck after a serious crash. They start with the hiring file. What's the first thing they're looking for that makes them smile when your insurance company is about to cry because you did something wrong?
Well, I try not to take plaintiff cases, but over the past few years, I've personally decided to take plaintiff cases simply because, like, we've allowed too many bad actors in the industry. So at some point, you have to do something about that. So we did take selective plaintiff cases, but when I see a plaintiff case, one of the first things I want to see is this a carrier who just made a mistake, but generally they do the right thing? I'm not going to touch that case. If I get a call from a plaintiff attorney and I look at the case and I see a load that's been brokered 4 times that ended up with a Russian carrier who had their principal place of business out of an Airbnb and a skyrise in Miami, and their driver was an illegal immigrant with a Russian CDL and no DQ file, I'm gonna fall in love with that one. So really, when we get these DQ files, it's not just about who they are and their history. Did the MBRs get ran and all these other things? It's, do you have a process in place to actually vet and screen your carriers, which is the same process you're going to look for in a broker case? Do you have something in writing that's going to objectively show you how to vet carriers and how to select carriers effectively? It's the same process as you would have with a driver. But really, we're looking for licenses. Do they have the right license? Do they have the right endorsement? Do they have training? Training is a huge element of this. A lot of people skip the training part. Some of them have the training documents in the file, but they don't sign them or fill them out. Road tests are a big one, actually. And there's a,
that doesn't shock me as someone that used to give them. Certain carriers just wave them through. Like I've seen trainers that take drivers on road tests, fail them, and then someone come out of the office and pass them 10 minutes later.
Yeah. But where this really fails is people have this misunderstanding that you being compliant makes you risk-free. And it's so far from that. So for a CDL driver, you don't have to have a road test. You can use a CDL in lieu of a road test. I hate that idea. I think it's the dumbest rule ever, because you can tell from our current predicament in the trucking industry how subjective all 50 state licensing programs are. So if we operate under that presumption, we say, all right, well, you have a California issued CDL or an Ohio issued CDL or a Pennsylvania or a New York issued CDL. You must be the best driver on the planet. We're going to let you drive our truck. That is the dumbest thing that you could possibly do. You don't know who gave them that license. You don't know who tested them. You don't know who trained them. So the CDL in lieu of is probably one of the biggest fail points that we have. It's stop trusting that CDL in lieu of and just give them a 10-minute road test. You spend 10 minutes in a truck with somebody and you're going to learn a couple things. One, can they drive the truck safely? And then the second thing you're going to learn is, if you have a conversation with somebody for 10 minutes, if you have any level of discernment at all, you're going to find out, are they a cultural fit? Are they a safety fit? Are they a fit for our company? Do we want them here? This isn't just about checking the box to say, yes, they have a CDL, or yes, we've done a road test. There's a lot that can go into these applications and PSP reviews and MBR reviews and road tests and those conversations that take part in that what could be hours long or days long or weeks long process, where you can learn so much about these people to determine not only if they're safe, but is it someone we really want working here?
All right. So my hard stop question for you, and I don't want your consulting answer. I don't want the lawyer answer. I want your trucker hat answer. Is the average small carrier winning the fight against freight fraud, or are they just getting their teeth kicked in?
I do think it depends on the carrier. I think it depends on how they're actually handling what they need to handle. Like, if you've got good criteria and you know who you're working with, I think you're generally going to be fine without some rare exception. But I think for the carriers and the brokers and et cetera that do business with just whoever, whenever, wherever at the lowest rate, those are the ones that are going to struggle, and they're always going to struggle until they change that mindset. So it's not an overarching answer.
So what's one move they can make today before they even close out watching this show that gives them an advantage tomorrow?
Start knowing who you're doing business with, and we're not talking about just some surface level check. I mean, look at open corporates, look at UCC lien filings, look at the companies that they co-own, look at who they share debt with, look at everything that most of these vetting platforms look at. Risk is not about just the surface level. Risk is about what is in their history and in their associations that you are adopting when you hire these people or when you source these carriers. And that's a big part of it. And a lot of people look at this like, well, that could take too long. Who's going to go look at UCC liens? It'll take you about 3.5 minutes to look at everything that I just told you. And pretty quickly, you're going to figure out like who is who's related to who's co-signing for who, and what's their past look like, and all those good things. And what have they done for maybe the past 5 or 10 years to change whatever that maybe was in their past before that. So it's not always necessarily that it's a one and done, that you're a terrible carrier. I think you can change that and fix it. You just have to kind of get on the ball and actually change it and fix it. And then in terms of actually selecting those people, you need to look at the overall big picture.
All right. Well, Rob, I appreciate you coming on and chatting it up with us, sharing some of your experience with everyone that's tuning in right now. We're going to go to a message from our sponsors over at truckstop.com. Thank you to our friends over at truckstop.com for their support of the show. Up next, my next guest, he used to write the tickets. Now he helps you understand how to avoid them. And he gets to sleep a little better at night knowing the roads are a little safer. John Seidel spent more than 20 years as a Wisconsin State Motor Carrier Trooper and FMCSA investigator. Today, at Trucking Wins, he's fighting for carriers instead of writing them up. He files DataQ challenges more daily than most people even read them anymore. And let's be honest, not everything written on the side of the highway deserves to follow you for the next 3 years. He helps you understand that. If a bad inspection is dragging down your CSA score, John's the guy you want in your corner. John, welcome to Brake Check.
Hey, thanks for having me today, sir. Appreciate you inviting me onto your show.
I'm excited to have this conversation. You and I got to chop it up over at SiriusXM. We had a really good conversation. I wanted to dive a little bit more into some of the experience that you bring to the table in an effort to help today's carriers remain on the road and understand what they're up against. Like the crackdown is not going anywhere. CSA is proposing a massive facelift. FMCSA says it's better. Truckers say, we'll see. They've heard these stories before. But with the new SMS grouping, is this actually helping good carriers or just making bad scores harder to understand?
All right. So as your previous guest said, it's not been launched yet. So if you go to federalregister.gov for FMCSA, they proposed this back in February of 2023. Then it took to go through the comments about, a year and 4 months. And in November of 24, they said, comments are good. We're going to launch this thing. We're ready to go. Well, it still hasn't launched. They're proposing 7 changes to the CSA, which is basically historical. They had to make these changes through the old budget bills. Well, these 7 changes in the launch date of November 24, they said, we're good to go. We're ready to go. We're going to educate the community. Well, they haven't flipped the switch yet. Every carrier, though, can log into their CSA through the portal, click on a tab called prioritization review, and see what those new CSA scores will look like. With all the things going on at FMCSA, it's just not a priority. There's other things in the crackdown, as you put it, that are getting more attention than the CSA score launch.
Now, you wore the badge for 20 plus years. There's no need. This is brake check. There is no need to be nice about what you're about to say. What are inspectors really looking for the second a truck rolls into the scale house?
Well, I mean, I'll give you a reality check of state patrol inspectors in the country. 5 inspections a day keeps the sergeant away. If you can do 5 inspections a day, they know you're doing your job. Now, in Wisconsin, when I was there, and states are all different, we had a contact requirement, 1 contact every 45 minutes. So if you did 5 inspections, that would be 5 contacts in 8 hours. You ain't hitting your ratio. You actually have to find violations to get an extra contact. So if I pulled over a truck, had 4 violations and the inspection, that's 5 contacts. 5 inspections a day kept my sergeant away. Now, what do they look like to pull you over? Everyone has their own little thing. Some people hate cell phone usage. Some people hate broken windshields. Some people hate overloads, bad flat tires. So every inspector will have their own little thing that they focus on when they're out there pulling trucks over, whether it's a scale or roadside.
So let's talk a little bit about the thing that everyone's arguing over. And I don't understand why they're arguing over it, because it's existed for a long time. Speak English or park the truck. Forget the headlines. How is this conversation actually happening roadside from an inspector's point of view?
All right. So there's an enforcement memo, and they came out with a document in May of 2025, right? So that document has been out for a little over a year. You can Google it. You can type in English language proficiency, FMCSA, and you can download the enforcement memo given to officers. A lot of it is blacked out. I have the original one because I got buddies in law enforcement, so I have it. So the new memo places drivers out of service, and there's a driver interview. And then there are street signs, 37 of them to be exact. They will randomly pick 4 of them, and you have to answer 3 of those 4 to pass. So earlier you said, what should a trucking company do? Get that memo. And every time you hire a driver, pull out the memo and read the memo, learn it, and then interview your driver and quiz them on those street signs. That's exactly what's going to happen at roadside. So why not put on your police officer hat as a safety director and pretend you're the inspector for 10 minutes and do the interview and ask them about the signs?
Now, one of the problems I have with this is, say you're the inspector, you deem this driver unqualified to be on the road, doesn't meet ELP standards.
Mhm.
The problem is it's not you that gets to return them to duty. The carrier, as soon as you leave, can return them to duty and let them go wreak havoc on the road. The driver can return themselves to duty. The problem I feel like it's lopsided, because that carrier obviously knew that driver didn't meet qualifications or meet muster when they hired them, and they're the very people that can put them back on the road.
Well, let's think about the logic behind law enforcement for a minute. Let's say you get pulled over for not speaking English according to the regulations, using the memo that I just said, and an officer somewhere puts you out of service. That will be on your PSP. So any trucking company who runs a PSP will see that. If you're not confident that driver has learned English, right? Or the officer maybe made a mistake in the past, you literally are taking a driver where if he gets pulled over again and is placed out of service, or he has a crash and he's placed out of service, every trip he ran for you could be deemed out of service. Again, if he had a PSP that said he was out of service 6 months ago, and then he gets pulled over again and he's out of service, by default, every trip in the middle was knowingly using a driver that was placed out of service, because you can't prove that he learned English between when he was stopped and when you hired him and then he crashed or got a roadside.
So, all right, that makes sense to me. I mean, that seems like common trucking sense. But yet people try to hack the system and they're like, well, if I don't get caught, I can keep going until there's that gap. And then all of a sudden you get caught again. And now we're asking questions about everything in the middle. And you're probably inviting an audit you don't want. Let's talk a little bit about DataQ. Let's start with busting a myth. Everybody complains about bad inspections, but almost nobody fights them. If DataQs are on your file, how many actually get corrected or tossed?
All right, so I think a lot of it depends on who's writing the DataQ. But let's go to this English language one a minute. What I would do is if I had a driver that was placed out of service for English language, I would tell the driver to go see a doctor, a speech therapist, somebody, and bring that memo with them from the government and have a professional speech person evaluate them based on that memo. Have them write a professional opinion. Then you take that and you file a DataQ. I would tell the driver, here's the DataQ website. You can log in as a driver and you can file your own DataQ to clean your own record if you feel that you should have passed the memo and the officer didn't pass it for you. That's an example of a DataQ that a driver could do. Now, most companies don't do DataQs as drivers. They don't tell the driver they can do their own DataQ. They do them for the driver or to represent the company. And there are some things you can do, I say, to improve your chances of winning a DataQ. One in particular is anybody out there who's done a DataQ, they give you a small little box to type in why you think that DataQ should win. Every DataQ I do, I say see summary. I open up a Word document and I can make that Word document as long as I want. I can import pictures. I can highlight. My job as writing a DataQ is to educate the officer that I think was wrong. And I do that through the Word document and attachments. Again, tip to the world, do not type a DataQ in the box they give you.
I like that. It seems simple enough, but it's probably that everyone thinks that they're confined to that box and there's not enough information you could put in that box to win a DataQ.
Correct. And then what you do is you want to explain it. The box only allows for a certain amount of characters and no pictures. And here's what the officer on the other end will do. A lot of them will just read the box because they got too many DataQs. If you use the box and say, open up this supporting document, open up this one, open up this one, they're not going to do that. Pull up a Word document and you type that Word document out like you're writing a book, like you're trying to write a college paper to convince the professor you know what you're talking about. And don't leave any rock unturned. Now you can still say see attachment in case they want to verify photos or a crash report or whatever. But that summary, I've done a DataQ summary in a Word document that's 9 pages long and I win.
So what's the violation you see written wrong more times than others? Like if one carrier keeps paying simply because they didn't know they could challenge it, and it's the most common misunderstood violation, and you see it and you're trying to point them in a direction, like if you see this, you should investigate further. What is that one that stands out?
I mean, I think it's personal conveyance. Personal conveyance has a guidance interpretation. It's a question and answer. And there, to me, are 4 clear ways you can use personal conveyance. 4. Now, you can always make an argument there's more than just those 4, but I say it's 4. And if the officer pulls you over and you're doing one of those 4, I have a pretty easy path to winning that DataQ because the officer isn't correct. Now, when you start pushing the envelope on these 4 items, that's when you start to get more subjective. But there's 4 clearly in writing that are almost, in my opinion, non-negotiable and easy to prove.
Now, you used to write these and now you're reading them. When we're talking about inspections, you spent 20 plus years pulling trucks into a weigh station. In the first 60 seconds, what does the driver do that makes you think this one's getting a quick inspection? This one needs more of my time. Like, what are you looking for from a driver's actions?
I don't think if you're at a scale, you're going to pull the vehicle over mostly because of something you observe, or you're in a state where you can just do it randomly, right? So we had a state patrol inspector in Wisconsin for whatever reason. Shout out to Donna Rooney if she hears this. I don't know if she's retired. she just hated cracked windshields. So I would be looking for overweights and I would be looking for bad tires, and she'd be sitting in the back and she'd be like, if you see one with a cracked windshield, pull it around. Again, like I said earlier, everybody has their own little pet peeves of what prompts them to pull over the truck. And then after you're pulled over, you got a level 1, you got a level 2, and you got a level 3. MCSAP, the Motor Carrier Safety Alliance program, outlines exactly how those inspections should go. Now, attitude from a driver is key. If you want a smooth inspection, be nice. You're not going to win an argument. Like, I don't win an argument with my wife, and my kids don't win an argument with either of us. So why try? Right? So your means to argue a state patrol roadside inspection is your DataQ after the fact in most cases.
So before we get ready to wrap up, I want to try to bury another myth. We've got you, a former trooper, sitting right here. What's the biggest piece of CSA nonsense carriers keep repeating and that you'd love to throw a dumpster at once and for all?
Well, when you talk about CSA nonsense, I get a kick out of everybody trying to say they're changing the way the scoring system works. This one's 3 points, 2 points, 1 point, 2 years, it'll fall off the system. Here's my utilization factor. Here is my mileage. How many relevant inspections do I have that'll drive down my measure? Those are all like technical things that talk about how CSA works. And whether you change the way they do the formula or not, the underlying factor is this: don't have violations. Don't speed. Put your seatbelt on. Don't follow too close. Get in the right lane. If the scale's open or you're not sure, pull in anyway. Who cares? They're not going to write you up because you pulled into a closed scale, right? Check your brakes. Check your lights. Check your tires. One thing that I constantly see from truckers is, when is a tire flat? A tire is flat when you have less than 50% of what's marked on the sidewall. That's a flat tire, and it's out of service. How many driver meetings do I do, or maintenance trainings do I do, where the mechanics don't even know that number? Go into your shop right now and ask all your mechanics, when is a tire flat? And see what answers you get. It should be 50%.
All right. So my hard stop question for you, I'm going to put you in the hot seat. You know how the game is played because you played on both teams. How many violations on a carrier CSA score right now simply don't belong there? Give me an average percentage.
I would say that out of every 100 inspections, you're going to win 2, 3, 4 DataQs, 3 to 5%. If you really dig deep and you find that violation that the officer was misinformed, I'd say, it's not a huge number. It's not like officers are making mistakes 50% of the time. It's just not happening. But there's a lot of education that needs to be out there for drivers, safety directors, motor carriers, and officers. I almost feel like when I do DataQs, I'm teaching the officers. That's the approach I take.
And if people want to learn more, if they want to continue their education, you have put a couple resources out there to help them. Where can they find those?
Well, I have a website called truckingwins.com. Every Tuesday, I do a member-only podcast, and instead of answering your questions, I just take everybody's questions. Sometimes I'm on there for 2, 3, 4 hours for the members of Trucking Wins. I also have about 140 training videos. Example would be split sleeper berth. I have a 47-minute split sleeper berth video that many customers use for orientation to explain hours of service. So come check me out there.
All right. Well, hey, man, I appreciate you carving out some time and dropping by the show. We're going to get ready to close it out. That's a wrap, everyone. Stay safe out there. I will see you next week right here on Brake Check Live on FreightWaves TV. But we're going to continue our summer chrome to close it out.
Disturbing the peace. So deaf. Yeah, chingy. JD, let's do it. I like the way you do that right there. Switch the hips when you walk and let down your hair. I like the way you do that right there. Swing your hips when you talking, that girl, why you do that right there? Shit's so bad, I'm constantly getting calls from the mirror. I got a girl rabbit, the way she bounce it for the curve. A man defending her like a lawyer, so beware. Some dudes be handcuffing, but dirty, that ain't fair. I want a bitch, she got the burn, like a turd. She with it, I'll hit it, though I ain't thinking about merge. I love these honeys, might as well call me Papa Bird. Girl, you know you looking good. Hey, don't I know you from the hood? You say you wouldn't when you would. would. Now take it off, you know you should. Now twist around, but I like the way you do that right there, right there. Swing the hips when you walk and let down your hair, down your hair.
Welcome back to the loading zone. Today's deep thought: trucks have big wheels.